It was the first day of April, and a young tourist named Liam arrived in London with a wide smile on his face. He had saved money for almost 2 years to make this trip happen. London had always been a dream city for him. The history, the old buildings, the royal palaces, and the famous guards in red uniforms fascinated him the most. He had seen so many videos about the royal guards standing still, never smiling, never moving, no matter what happened around them. To him, they looked like living statues. When Liam checked into his small hotel near Westminster, he looked out the window and could see the city waking up. The sky was light gray, and people were already walking briskly to work. He felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He wanted this trip to be special. He wanted stories to tell his friends back home. That was when he remembered the date, April 1st. It was April Fool's Day, a day full of jokes and light-hearted fun. He smiled to himself and thought about pulling a harmless prank during his trip. He wasn't a mean person, and he didn't like hurting anyone's feelings, but he thought it would be funny to do something small, something innocent. While scrolling on his phone, he saw a travel video about the royal guards. The video host tried to make one laugh but failed. That's when an idea came into his mind. What if he could make a royal guard smile? It would be the perfect April Fool's moment. The next morning, Liam left his hotel early. The air was cool and the street smelled faintly of rain. He walked past old brick buildings, coffee shops, and red buses that rolled smoothly through the streets. London felt grand and full of secrets. When he finally reached Buckingham Palace, a crowd had already gathered behind the iron gates. People were taking pictures and watching the guards march in perfect rhythm. The sound of boots hitting the stone echoed through the air like music. Liam watched in amazement. The guards were tall, dressed in bright red coats and black bearskin hats that made them look even taller. Their expressions were completely serious. They didn't blink much or look around. Tourists tried everything to make them react. Funny faces, small dances, even pretending to trip. But the guards didn't move an inch. Liam chuckled and whispered to himself that it was time for his prank. He looked around to make sure no one would misunderstand his plan. He didn't want trouble. He just wanted a funny moment. He had packed a small rubber chicken in his bag as part of his prank idea. It made a silly squeak sound, and he thought maybe it could get a tiny smile out of the guard. He waited until the crowd got a little smaller, and then walked closer to the line where the guard stood. A few tourists noticed him holding the toy and started giggling. He squeezed it once and it made a squeaky sound. The noise echoed softly in the courtyard. Liam laughed quietly. The guard, however, didn't even flinch. His eyes stayed straight ahead, his chin lifted slightly. Liam tried again, holding the toy up higher. This time he made a funny face too, crossing his eyes and puffing his cheeks. People around him laughed a little louder. He felt proud of his small audience, but the guard remained still as stone. His face was calm and strong, showing no sign of amusement or irritation. Liam started to feel a bit embarrassed. Maybe this wasn't as funny as he had imagined. The last thing he wanted was to look foolish in front of everyone. Just as he was about to step back, a polite voice came from behind him. "Sir, please step back from the line." Liam turned around and saw another guard, this one walking slowly toward him. His expression wasn't angry but firm. He explained that the guards were not to be disturbed during their duty. The crowd became quiet. Liam's face turned red. He quickly apologized, saying it was just a harmless joke for April Fool's Day. The guard didn't raise his voice. He simply told Liam that the royal guards had an important job, to protect and represent the royal family. It wasn't a game for them. The calmness in his tone made Liam realize the seriousness of the moment. He put the toy away and nodded respectfully. The guard didn't scold him further but asked him to enjoy his visit responsibly. After stepping back into the crowd, Liam felt mixed emotions. He was relieved that the situation didn't escalate, but also a little ashamed. He hadn't meant any disrespect, yet he had almost crossed a line without understanding it. He looked again at the guards and noticed something he hadn't before: the discipline, the pride, the sense of honor in their stillness. It wasn't about looking serious. It was about representing a long tradition. Later that afternoon, Liam walked around the palace gardens thinking about what had happened. He realized how much effort went into keeping traditions alive. The guards weren't there to entertain. They were symbols of dedication. That thought stayed with him for the rest of the day. But as the sun began to set, something unexpected happened. A man wearing a dark uniform approached him near the garden fence. He wasn't one of the guards from earlier, but looked like someone official. He asked if Liam had been the tourist with the toy chicken earlier. Liam hesitated for a second, then nodded. The man didn't look upset. Instead, he gave a small smile and said, "The officer you spoke to asked me to find you. He'd like to meet you for a short word if you don't mind." Liam's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what to expect. Was he in trouble? Or was it something else entirely? The man assured him it wasn't about punishment, but rather something the officer wanted to explain personally. With curiosity and a little nervousness, Liam followed the man toward a side entrance near the palace grounds. The air was calm and the city's sound seemed far away. He could feel his heart beating faster. He didn't know that this meeting would completely change how he viewed his trip, and himself. That day began as a simple April Fool's adventure, but it was slowly turning into something far more meaningful. What awaited him beyond that gate was no joke at all. It was the start of an experience he would never forget. Liam followed the uniformed man quietly, unsure of what was going to happen next. The palace grounds looked peaceful as they walked along the stone path lined with trimmed bushes and bright flowers. He tried to stay calm, but his mind was racing with questions. Why would the guard want to meet him? Was it about the prank? Would they fine him or send him away? The man leading him didn't speak much. He only said, "Please don't worry, sir. It's just a short talk." They reached a small side building near the main palace wall. It looked official but not intimidating. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and polished floors. A few officers were working at desks, checking papers and talking softly. The man asked Liam to wait in a small waiting room. The walls had framed photos showing the history of the royal guards, rows of men standing straight, parades, ceremonies, and royal events. Liam sat down and stared at the photos. He realized how old the tradition was, stretching back hundreds of years. Each guard in the pictures looked proud and focused. He felt a little embarrassed again, remembering his prank with the rubber chicken. He hadn't meant harm, but now he understood how serious their duty was. After a few minutes, the officer from earlier entered the room. Liam recognized him right away, the same guard who had told him to step back politely. Without the tall bearskin hat, he looked more approachable, though still serious. His name tag read Sergeant Brooks. He gave Liam a small nod and invited him to sit across from him at a wooden desk. "Good afternoon, Mr. Liam," the officer began. His tone was calm but direct. "I asked to meet you because I wanted to talk about what happened earlier. I can see you're not a troublemaker and your prank seemed harmless, but I want you to understand something about our duty." Liam nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. I didn't mean any disrespect. It was just April Fool's Day and I thought it would be funny." "I'm sorry if it caused any trouble." Sergeant Brooks gave a gentle smile. "I believe you, but I also believe that understanding comes from learning. Many visitors see us as statues or performers, but we're actually soldiers serving in one of the oldest regiments in the world. Our stillness isn't just discipline, it's a sign of honor and respect to the crown. Every guard here has trained for years to hold that position." Liam listened carefully. He could feel the respect in the officer's voice. "I didn't know that," he admitted. "I thought it was just part of the show." Brooks nodded. "That's a common thought. Many people think we're here only for tourist pictures, but we also carry real responsibility. We're trained to protect the palace and those inside it. Even when we stand still, we're fully alert." The more Liam listened, the more he began to appreciate the meaning behind the guard's silence. What seemed like simple stillness was actually strength and focus. Sergeant Brooks continued, "We don't blame tourists for being curious, but it's good when people learn the story behind what they see. That's why I wanted to meet you. You seem like someone who wants to understand, not just take photos." Liam smiled shyly. "I really do want to understand. I didn't realize how much work goes into what you do." The officer stood up and walked to a window that looked out at the palace courtyard. "Every morning we start before sunrise. We clean our uniforms, check our boots, and practice drills. Even one mistake during guard change can reflect badly on the entire regiment. Everything we do must be perfect." Liam followed his gaze and saw the guards still standing at their posts outside. The crowd had grown again. People were laughing and pointing cameras, but the guards didn't move at all. They stood tall and strong under the gray London sky. Sergeant Brooks turned back and said, "You seem to have a good heart. That's why I'm offering you something unusual. Would you like to see what happens behind the scenes? It's not something we usually show to tourists. Liam's eyes widened. Really? You mean I can see where the guards train? The officer nodded. Yes, but you must promise to follow instructions and show respect at all times. You'll need to leave your phone and camera outside. This visit is about learning, not recording. Liam agreed immediately. He placed his phone in a small locker near the entrance and followed Brooks down a hallway that led to a courtyard behind the main palace area. The air felt cooler there, and the sound of footsteps echoed on the stone. A few guards were practicing drills with wooden rifles, moving in perfect rhythm. Every step was sharp, every turn exact. Brooks stopped near them and whispered, "This is where discipline is built. It takes months of training to move in harmony like this. Each guard knows his position by heart." Liam watched with awe. He noticed how serious the guards were, yet there was a quiet pride in their movements. They weren't just performing. They were protecting a piece of history. Brooks explained how they learned to stay still during long hours, how they balanced patience and awareness, and how every detail of their uniform had meaning. The black bearskin hat symbolized bravery, the red coat represented honor, and the white belt stood for purity of duty. Liam was fascinated. He never imagined there was so much tradition behind those bright red uniforms. One of the younger guards training nearby tripped slightly during a turn, and Brooks calmly corrected his stance. There was no anger, only guidance. Liam admired how respectful the training environment was. As they walked further, Brooks shared stories of different royal ceremonies. He spoke about standing guard during cold winter nights and under heavy rain. Liam asked how they managed to stay so focused. Brooks smiled and said, "We think about the generations before us who stood in the same place. That keeps us strong." For the first time, Liam understood that being a royal guard was not just about standing still. It was about dedication, patience, and pride in one's duty. Before they returned to the office, Brooks stopped near a display case holding medals and old photos. He pointed to one picture showing a group of guards from the past century. "These men served during the hardest times," he said softly. "They protected not only the palace but also hope. Every guard here continues that same duty." Liam looked at the photo closely and felt something change inside him. The prank he thought was funny now seemed silly and small. He realized he had come to London for fun, but this experience was teaching him something deeper: respect, discipline, and history. Back at the office, Brooks handed Liam a small souvenir pin shaped like a guard's hat. "A reminder of what you learned today," he said. Liam took it gratefully. "Thank you, sir. I'll never forget this. You've given me more than a tour. You've given me a lesson," the officer smiled warmly. "I'm glad you understand. And remember, sometimes the best stories happen when we least expect them." As Liam walked out of the palace grounds, the evening sun began to break through the clouds. The red uniforms of the guards glowed under the soft golden light. He stood by the gate for a moment, feeling grateful. What had started as a simple joke had turned into one of the most meaningful experiences of his life. He didn't know it yet, but the story wasn't over. The next day would bring another surprise, one that would connect him to the guards more deeply than he ever imagined. The next morning, Liam woke up earlier than usual. The streets outside his small hotel were still quiet, with only a few cars passing by. He opened the window and looked out at the misty London sky. The events of the previous day played in his mind again and again. He couldn't believe that one small prank had led him to meet a real royal guard and even visit their training grounds. It was more than he could have ever expected. He touched the small souvenir pin on his jacket pocket and smiled. It was shaped like a guard's tall hat and reminded him of Sergeant Brooks's words, "Sometimes the best stories happen when we least expect them." He had planned his trip for fun, but now it had turned into something meaningful. After breakfast, Liam decided to visit the palace again, just to watch the guards with a new perspective. This time he didn't carry any toys or props. He only carried a small notebook to write down what he saw and felt. When he reached Buckingham Palace, the crowd was already gathering behind the black gates. Children waved flags, tourists took photos, and the guards stood tall as always. Liam stood quietly among the people, watching their discipline and grace. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Good morning, Mr. Liam." He turned and saw Sergeant Brooks, now in full uniform again, his tall hat gleaming under the light. Liam smiled with surprise. "Good morning, sir," he said respectfully. Brooks gave a small nod. I see you came back. That's a good sign. I was hoping to see you. I spoke with my captain yesterday about your visit. He appreciated your curiosity and your understanding. He suggested that, if you're interested, you could spend one day observing our routine more closely. We call it a civilian observer day. It's rare, but it can be arranged. Liam's eyes widened in amazement. Really, I'd love to. That would be an honor, Brooks smiled. Then follow me. They entered through the same side gate as before, and Liam was again asked to store his phone and camera. He didn't mind. He wanted to experience everything with his full attention. The morning air inside the palace courtyard felt different today. It was filled with the energy of movement and purpose. Guards were polishing their boots, brushing their coats, and preparing for the changing of the guard ceremony. Brooks explained each step as they walked. Every detail matters here, from how we shine our buttons to how we hold our rifles. Even the smallest mistake can stand out during inspection. Liam nodded, fascinated. He could see the pride in every movement. The guards worked quietly but efficiently, helping each other and making sure everything was perfect. Their teamwork was impressive. One guard, a young man named Tom, smiled slightly when he saw Liam watching. "You're the tourist from yesterday, right?" he said politely. Liam laughed softly. "Yes, that's me. The one with the silly prank," Tom chuckled. "Don't worry about it. Happens all the time. But it's good that you came back. Not many people take the time to understand what we do." The group continued preparing for the day's ceremony. Brooks guided Liam to a small viewing area where he could watch the entire routine. The guards lined up in perfect formation. Their boots hit the ground in unison, creating a sharp rhythm that echoed through the courtyard. The commanding officer called out instructions, and every guard moved exactly as told. Liam watched in awe. There was no hesitation in their movements, no sign of distraction. It was like watching a living machine made of pride and discipline. The ceremony began, and tourists outside cheered as the new group of guards marched in. From behind the scenes, Liam could see how much practice and effort went into every small step. After the ceremony, Brooks led Liam to a small dining hall where guards were having tea and sandwiches. The atmosphere was relaxed and laughter filled the room. The guards were no longer standing still or silent. They were regular people, joking and sharing stories. Liam sat with them and they welcomed him warmly. Tom, the young guard, asked, "So what made you want to prank one of us?" Liam smiled shyly. "Honestly, I just thought it would be funny. I didn't understand how much it means to you all until Sergeant Brooks explained it." Brooks nodded approvingly. "That's the thing. Many people don't realize what's behind the silence. It takes strength to stay still while everyone around you is laughing, shouting, or even trying to make you react. But once people learn about the purpose, they start to respect it." Liam took a sip of tea and asked, "How long can a guard stand still like that?" Tom replied, "Usually about 2 hours at a time. It takes focus, but after a while it becomes a habit. You learn to control your body and mind." Liam listened with deep respect. He realized that standing still was not just physical endurance, but also mental strength. After lunch, Brooks took Liam to see another part of the palace grounds where guards practiced emergency drills. They weren't just ceremonial guards. They were trained soldiers. They learned how to respond quickly in case of any threat, how to protect the area, and how to remain calm under pressure. Watching them train was inspiring. As the afternoon sun shone on the stone walls, Brooks spoke about the values that guided them. Discipline, respect, and honor. These are the 3 pillars of our duty. They guide everything we do. When we stand outside, we carry the history of all who came before us. Liam wrote those words in his notebook. He wanted to remember them forever. He felt something change in his heart that day. The city that once looked like a place for sightseeing now felt alive with meaning. Every sound, every step, every salute carried a story. Later in the day, Brooks invited Liam to stand near the gate during a quieter hour when there were fewer tourists. He handed him a replica of the red coat and hat, not for real duty, but just to experience how it felt to wear one. Liam was surprised by how heavy the hat was and how stiff the uniform felt. He stood still for only 5 minutes, but it felt like an hour. The sun was warm and the weight of the hat pressed down on his head. People walking by glanced at him and smiled. When Brooks told him he could relax, Liam laughed. "I can't believe you all do this for hours without moving." "My shoulders are already tired," Brooks chuckled. "Now you understand why we take our job seriously. It's not easy, but it's meaningful." Liam nodded. It's more than I imagined. You all deserve so much respect." Before he left for the day, Brooks handed him a small card signed by the regiment. It had the words, "Honor through discipline," printed in gold letters. Liam thanked him sincerely and promised to share what he learned with others. As he walked back toward his hotel, the city looked brighter. The sound of the guard's boots still echoed in his ears. He realized that his prank had not been a mistake after all. It had led him to discover something valuable, a lesson about patience, respect, and the quiet strength of those who serve with pride. When he reached his hotel room, he placed the souvenir pin and the gold-lettered card side by side on the table. He smiled, thinking how strange life could be. A day that began with a silly joke had turned into one of the most unforgettable experiences of his life. But little did he know, the next day would bring an even bigger surprise, one that would connect him to the guards in a way he could never have imagined. The next morning, sunlight filled Liam's room as he woke up with a smile. He had spent most of the night thinking about the day he spent with the guards. Every memory played in his mind like a calm movie. The sharp sound of boots hitting the ground, the proud look in the guard's eyes, and Sergeant Brooks's wise words about duty and honor. It all felt special, like he had discovered a secret part of London that most tourists never got to see. He got dressed and decided to visit the palace once more, before exploring other parts of the city. It was his last full day in London, and he wanted to spend it where everything had changed for him. He put on his jacket, slipped the souvenir pin on the pocket, and carried his small notebook in his hand. The morning air was cool, and the sky was bright with soft white clouds. When he reached Buckingham Palace, he noticed a small group of guards already standing near the main gate. The crowd was still small, mostly early visitors taking photos. Liam stood quietly, watching them with respect. Every movement seemed graceful and meaningful. After a few minutes, he heard someone calling his name softly. "Mr. Liam." He turned around and saw Sergeant Brooks walking toward him. This time, Brooks was not in his ceremonial red coat, but in a dark formal uniform. He looked calm and professional as always. "Good morning, sir," Liam greeted warmly. Brooks smiled and said, "Good morning. I'm glad you came again. I was hoping to see you before your trip ends. We have something special for you today." Liam looked surprised. "For me?" Brooks nodded. "Yes. Yesterday, after your visit, I spoke to my captain again. He was pleased with your respect and genuine interest. The regiment decided to give you a small honor for your appreciation of our duty. It's rare for us to invite a tourist to this kind of moment, but you've shown kindness and understanding, and that deserves acknowledgement." Liam was speechless for a few seconds. "That's incredible. I don't know what to say." Brooks gestured for him to follow. They walked along the side path toward the training area he had visited before. Everything looked familiar, but this time the atmosphere felt more formal. A few guards were lined up, standing tall and straight. A man in a dark blue uniform with golden badges waited near a table covered with a velvet cloth. On the table was a small wooden box. Brooks spoke softly. "That's Captain Harris. He'll be speaking with you." Liam took a deep breath as they approached. Captain Harris turned and smiled kindly. He looked serious yet gentle, with eyes that carried years of experience. "Good morning, Mr. Liam," he said. "I've heard much about you from Sergeant Brooks. It seems you have learned an important lesson during your stay." Liam nodded respectfully. "Yes, sir. I've learned that what looks simple from outside often has great meaning inside. I understand now that being a guard is about pride, discipline, and respect." Captain Harris nodded approvingly. "Very well said. We appreciate visitors who take the time to understand, not just to watch. That's why we have decided to give you a token of appreciation." He opened the small wooden box on the table. Inside was a silver coin with the emblem of the regiment engraved on it. "This coin," Captain Harris explained, "is a special keepsake. It's not sold or given to the public. It's presented only to those who show respect and kindness toward our service. You've earned it by showing humility and a desire to learn." Liam's eyes widened. He felt deeply honored. He accepted the coin with both hands and said, "Thank you, sir. I don't deserve this, but I promise I'll keep it safe and remember everything I've learned here." The captain smiled gently. "That's all we ask. Sometimes respect is the greatest reward." The other guard standing nearby gave a small salute, acknowledging the moment. Liam stood there, feeling humbled and grateful. It was as if the city itself had welcomed him into its history. After the short ceremony, Brooks walked with him through the gardens surrounding the training area. The flowers were in full bloom and the soft wind carried their fragrance. Brooks said quietly, "Not many people receive that coin. You've made a good impression on everyone. Sometimes a small mistake can lead to great lessons if we're willing to listen." Liam smiled and nodded. "I think this trip has changed me more than I expected. I'll never forget what I learned from you and the guards." Brooks looked thoughtful. "That's good to hear. But I think there's one more thing for you to see before you go." He guided Liam toward another section of the palace grounds. It was quieter there, with tall trees shading the path. They reached a small memorial garden surrounded by low stone walls. In the center stood a bronze statue of a guard holding his rifle upright, his face calm and determined. Below the statue was a plaque with names engraved on it. Brooks stood beside the statue and said softly, "These are the names of guards who served many years ago. Some stood watch during times of peace and some during difficult days. This statue reminds us that standing still doesn't mean doing nothing. It means holding your ground with courage." Liam read the names silently. Each one carried history, effort, and sacrifice. He realized that every guard he had seen was part of a long chain of dedication that stretched across generations. He felt honored to have learned even a small part of their story. Brooks turned to him. "When you return home, share what you saw here. Let people know that behind the still faces and red coats there are real people, strong, patient, and proud of what they do." Liam nodded firmly. "I promise I will. I'll tell everyone that the guards are more than symbols. They are hearts that stand for honor." The sergeant smiled with pride. "That's all we could hope for." They walked back slowly toward the main gate. The afternoon sun made the palace walls glow softly. The crowd outside had grown larger now. People laughed and pointed their cameras just like before, but to Liam everything looked different. He no longer saw silent men in uniforms. He saw heroes in plain sight. People who served quietly but carried the weight of tradition on their shoulders. Before parting, Brooks shook his hand. "You came here as a tourist," he said, "but you're leaving as a friend of the guards. Remember this day whenever you need strength or patience in your life." Liam smiled warmly. "I will, sir. Thank you for everything." He left the palace feeling peaceful. The silver coin felt heavy in his pocket, but in a comforting way. It reminded him of discipline, respect, and the strength of stillness. As he walked back through the busy London streets, the noise of the city didn't bother him. He felt calm inside, as if he carried a piece of that royal steadiness with him. That evening he sat in his hotel room near the window, looking out at the lights of London. He placed the coin next to the souvenir pin and the card that said "Honor through Discipline." Together, they told the story of how a small prank had turned into a life-changing journey. Liam took out his notebook and began to write everything he had learned. He wanted to capture every detail, the sounds, the faces, the lessons. He knew one day he would share this story with others, not as a joke, but as an example of how understanding and respect can change someone's heart. But as he closed his notebook, a letter slipped under his hotel door. It was sealed with a golden emblem. When he picked it up and opened it, his eyes widened in surprise. It was an invitation, signed by Captain Harris himself. The letter said he was invited to attend a special event at the palace the next morning, before his flight home. Liam's heart began to beat faster. He had no idea what it meant, but he could tell it was something important. His story with the royal guards wasn't finished yet. The next morning would bring something even more remarkable. Liam barely slept that night. The letter from Captain Harris lay on his bedside table, and he kept glancing at it every few minutes. He could hardly believe what it said. It was a formal invitation to attend a private ceremony at the palace before his flight home. There was no explanation of what the event was about, only the time and place. His heart filled with excitement and curiosity. As the sun rose over London, he dressed neatly in a plain blue shirt and black trousers. He polished his shoes until they shone, wanting to show respect. Before leaving the hotel, he slipped the souvenir pin onto his jacket and tucked the silver coin into his pocket. These small items now felt like lucky charms that connected him to something bigger than himself. The streets of London were calm that morning. The sound of bells echoed from a nearby church, and the air was fresh. When Liam arrived at the palace, a guard at the gate recognized him and smiled slightly before opening the gate. "Good morning, Mr. Liam," the guard said kindly. "They are expecting you inside." He walked through the same path he had taken before, but this time it felt different. The air carried a quiet sense of importance. Inside the courtyard, a few guards were lined up in their red coats and tall hats. Their boots shone under the early sunlight. Nearby stood Sergeant Brooks, who waved when he saw Liam approaching. "Good morning, Mr. Liam," Brooks greeted warmly. "I'm glad you made it. Today's event is simple but meaningful. Captain Harris will explain everything shortly. How are you feeling?" "A little nervous," Liam admitted with a smile. "I don't know what to expect," Brooks chuckled. "That's good. Sometimes surprises are the best part of life." They waited near the courtyard until Captain Harris arrived. The captain's presence brought calm and authority to the place. His uniform looked perfect, and his voice was steady as always. "Good morning, Mr. Liam," he said kindly. "Thank you for coming. Today we have something special to show you before you leave our city." Liam nodded respectfully. "Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be here." The captain led him toward the open square in front of the palace gate, where a small platform had been set up. A group of guards stood ready, their rifles resting on their shoulders. The crowd outside the gates was small but curious. Brooks whispered, "Today we're holding a short appreciation ceremony. It's part of our tradition to honor those who have shown genuine respect toward our service, even if they are not part of the regiment." Liam felt his heart beat faster. He hadn't imagined that his small act of learning and understanding could lead to this moment. The captain stepped onto the platform and addressed the small group. His voice carried clearly across the courtyard. "Every day, hundreds of visitors come to see the Royal Guards," Captain Harris began. "Many admire their discipline, but few understand the meaning behind their silence. Recently, a tourist named Liam learned this lesson in an unexpected way. What began as a harmless prank became a journey of understanding, respect, and friendship. Today, we wish to recognize that journey." Liam felt a wave of emotion wash over him. The guards standing behind the captain turned their heads slightly in his direction. Their expressions remained calm, but there was warmth in their eyes. Captain Harris continued, "Sometimes small actions teach big lessons, Mr. Liam. By your willingness to learn and your humility, you have reminded us that kindness and understanding still exist in the world. For that, we thank you." He motioned for Liam to step forward. Brooks gave him a gentle nudge and whispered, "Go on, lad. This is your moment." Liam walked toward the captain, feeling nervous but proud. When he reached the platform, Captain Harris handed him a framed certificate bearing the royal emblem. It read, "Presented in recognition of respect and appreciation for the service of the Royal Guards." As Liam accepted it, the crowd outside clapped softly. The guards behind him gave a salute in perfect unison. The sound of their boots hitting the stone ground echoed like music. It was a simple moment, but it carried great meaning. Liam looked at the captain and said sincerely, "Thank you, sir. This means more than words can describe. I'll carry this memory with me forever." Captain Harris smiled. "We are glad to hear that. Remember what you've learned here. Respect and patience will take you far in life. And when you tell this story, tell it not as a prank gone wrong, but as a lesson in understanding." Brooks stepped forward next, holding a small velvet box. "There's one last gift from the regiment," he said, opening the box to reveal a miniature replica of a Royal Guard figure made of polished metal. "A reminder of your time with us." Liam accepted it carefully. "Thank you, Sergeant Brooks. You've been very kind to me." "I'll never forget your guidance," Brooks smiled. "It was my duty and my pleasure. You listened when others might have walked away. That makes all the difference." After the short ceremony, Liam spent a few quiet moments talking with some of the guards. They were friendly and humble, sharing small stories about their duties and how proud they were to serve. Liam realized that behind every serious face was a person with dreams, families, and laughter. Before leaving, he stood once more near the gate and looked at the guards on duty. He thought about how he had once tried to make one of them laugh, not realizing the depth of their purpose. Now he saw them differently, not as silent figures but as symbols of strength and respect. When he turned to leave, Brooks called after him. "Liam," he said warmly, "whenever you visit London again, come see us. You'll always be welcome here." Liam smiled. "I will, Sergeant. Thank you for everything." He walked away slowly, his heart full of gratitude. As he reached the edge of the courtyard, he turned one last time to watch the guards standing proudly at their posts. The morning light made their red coats shine. and the rhythm of their steps echoed through the palace grounds. That sound stayed with him as he traveled back to his hotel, packed his bags, and headed to the airport. While sitting by the window of the airplane, he took out his notebook and began writing about his experience from start to finish. He described how a simple April Fool's idea had led him into a story filled with lessons about respect, tradition, and honor. He ended his note with the words, "Sometimes a joke can open the door to wisdom if we listen to what it teaches." When the plane took off, he looked down at London from above. The River Thames shimmered like silver under the sunlight, and the palace stood proud in the distance. He smiled, knowing that part of his heart would always remain there, in the calm footsteps of the guards and the quiet strength they represented. As the plane soared higher, he placed the silver coin in his hand and closed his eyes. He could almost hear the echo of Sergeant Brooks' voice saying, "You came as a tourist, but you're leaving as a friend of the guards." That sentence stayed with him forever. And from that day onward, whenever someone mentioned April Fool's Day, Liam didn't think about silly jokes anymore. He thought about the guards at Buckingham Palace, the men who stood tall in silence and taught him that the greatest lessons often come from the most unexpected moments. And that, indeed, was no joke.